Welcome to the Wargaming Garage and part 2 of the narrative campaign, The Black Watch. This time we join the sisters on Gamma Elum in the Botana subsector as they've been charged with the evacuation of the planet as the High Fleet Leviathan advances through the sector. But it turns out the Tyrannids are the least of their worries as the tomb world awakens beneath their feet. So in the desperate attempt to clear the planet and at the same time halt the advance of the Necrons, how will the sisters fare? Let's go on to see the armies and deployment of the mission. So here's 1,000 points of Necrons. It's the Annihilator Legion, and this is the Forsaken Dynasty. It's led today by a Scorpec Lord who has the enhancement ingrained superiority, so when it leads a unit, critical hits improve the AP by 1. And he'll be leading a squad of 6 Scorpec destroyers. We have a squad of 10 warriors, and then we have a squad of 6 Ophidian destroyers with the Plasmancers, and there's also 2 Plasmancers on the Scorpec destroyers. We then have a squad of 6 Lockhurst destroyers, and then we have a squad of 3 heavy Lockhurst destroyers with a squad of 10 flayed ones. So this Annihilator Legion, I'm hoping does what it says on the tin. I've come up against Necrons but never ran Necrons before, so please bear with me on that one. Yeah, that is 1,000 points of Necrons. And here is just shy of 1,000 points of Sisters of Battle. And today you'll probably be guessing that I'm running the Penitent Host. They're one of the new detachments for the new codex that's just dropped. And today we are led by Sister Arabina. She's a Palatine for the Order of the Burning Shield, the Black Watch themselves, and she's leading this Penitent Host in an effort to throw them at the Necrons that are coming towards her and slow them down and see if these sisters can repent for their sins. So she has the enhancement today, the Palm of Righteous Judgment, which allows her, when they destroy an enemy unit, then you can basically replace a miracle dice, and then it comes back in your pool as a 6, essentially. Adeptus Sororitas model only. While the bearer is on the battlefield, each time the enemy unit is destroyed by a penitent unit from your army, you can discard 1 miracle dice and then gain 1 dice with a value of a 6. So quite powerful, I think. Backing her up is an Imagifier who is going to be attached to the Retributor squad to give them a 4-up invulnerable save. We then have 1, 2, 3 squads of Archoflagellants. We've got a squad of Repentia. We then have a squad of Battle Sisters. We have then 1, 2 Penitent Engines and an Exorcist for some, hopefully, some long range hurt to go into the Necrons. So we'll go through what the Penitent Host does as we go through the battle, but essentially, you know, there's a few things you can do. You choose, almost a bit like Space Marines and their chapter tactics, you choose something that the army does during the battle, and you can choose it once. So we'll go through that as we go through the game. With that, we'll go on to the mission and deployment. So the seed for this mission today is from the Prior Nexus book, the Crusade book for the Necrons, or Necron themed Crusade book anyway, and it's the mission called Amidst the Miasma. And so basically the way that it works is anything that essentially you've got a deployment zone, and a deployment zone at the far side, anything that's in no man's land, there's like a big fog, a big haze, and anything, if you try and advance through it, it's subtract 2 from the advance roll, which is fine. And then if you try and fight through it, it just says for the hit rolls it's close combat, and it's for targeted attacks, you're -1 from the hit roll. So once you get through into the deployment zones, either side, obviously you're in the clear, and those things don't apply. So we've taken that as a seed mission for this game, but essentially what we've got is we've got a comms tower here and a landing pad over here. There will be the 2 objectives for both armies to control. So we're going to try and stop any communication, warning of anything coming off of this area of the planet, and then we've got anything trying to leave and go to maybe an onward, a planetary evacuation pad, but anything can be stopped from there. So it's a point for holding that at the end of the game. It's a point for holding that at the end of the game. So it could result in a draw, could result in a total whitewash. Don't know, let's see and find out. So the Necrons will be deploying this side and advancing through to try and get rid of this, try and kill the Sisters. The Sisters will be trying to halt that advance from the Necrons. Will be throwing everything from the Repentia squads and from the Penitent Host into the lines to try and forestall them. So with that, we'll go on to deployment. So after deployment, the Lockhurst destroyers set up in the woods just over the missile silos. The Ophidian destroyers and the warriors set up in the centre of the battle grid, with the heavy destroyers up on top of the cliff face, with the Scorpek destroyers and the Scorpek Lord in support, with the flayed ones pushing up on the Necron's left-hand flank. And for the Sisters, the Retributors, the Palatine and the Imagifier went up onto the landing pad so they can try and shoot anything that comes near it, in support with the Battle Sisters, and then over towards the from the middle onwards over to the right hand flank, it's all pretty much Penitent host and engines and squads. When you've got the 2 separate Penitent engines and a squad of Archoflagellants, you've then got the Repentia squad, you've then got another squad of Archoflagellants with the Exorcist sitting here for long range support, and then right on the flank of the third and final squad of Archoflagellants. There's nothing in the mission that says about attackers going first or anything else like that, so we use the white dice for the Sisters and the garage dice for the Necrons. So let's see who gets first turn. And the Sisters set out on the front foot. The Sisters turn 1. end of the Sisters movement phase for Battle Round 1. We rolled the miracle dice for them, which rolled a 4 at the start of the battle round, and we didn't do anything in terms of their Repentia host ability, so we stayed in just standard tactics. We may be keen for redemption, but we're also not necessarily that stupid either. So all we've done is we've moved the Repentia up behind the bastion, and the 2 squads of Archoflagellants have moved up behind the barricades, and the Exorcists come around into view to take a line of sight on a couple of units. Over this side, one of the Penitent engines went one side of the bastion with a squad of Flagellants and the other Penitent engine just sitting behind. This squad of Sisters moved up, and that squad of Sisters also advanced and moved up, just to start getting some of the weapons in range and starting to get some blocking off for later turns potentially. The Sisters aren't exactly in a target-rich environment, and we're not entirely sure what we're sort of, I guess, afraid of most in some respects. But the Exorcist can see the squad of Scorpec destroyers, so I think that's what we're going to go with. In terms of terrain, just quickly, things like this bastion, that's obscuring, that'll be obscuring, and there's a lot of obscuring terrain all over the place. There's woods, there's ruins. These sealed buildings, this is quite close to be obscuring, so there's lots of bits of places for the models to hide behind. So with that being said, the other thing is the Exorcist is firing over no man's land, which will give it -1 to hit. So although it can see, it will also be hitting on 4s. So there's only a little bit of shooting this turn, which will be the Exorcist into the Scorpec destroyers. So let's get on with it. So we'll start with the heavy bolters, hitting on 4s. And 2 hits. Strength 5 versus toughness 6, so 5's to wound. No wound. Okay. And D6 plus 2 for the number of shots on the missile launcher. Okay, not bad. So 7 shots hitting on 4s. Wounding on 3s. That's not bad. Shame those 6s don't do anything. So it's -3, but there's cover in the way, so it's -2, so 4 5-up saves. Okay. So it's D6 a time, so let's go through. So that's for 2 damage, and then the second one would kill him. Okay, so it kills 1 and puts 1 down to 1 wound. So with nothing else doing, that marks the end of the first turn for the Sisters. So let's see how the Necrons deal with the Sisters in front of them as we go on to Necrons, turn 1. At the end of the Necrons movement phase, we rolled another miracle dice off camera and got another 4. There they are, nicely placed. And so the Lockhurst destroyers brought themselves around to get line of sight on that Penitent engine and anything else that they think they might want to eradicate. The Ophidian destroyers just held the line and see if the Sisters take the bait, whilst the warriors advanced forward, and are just going to sit there ready for any overwatch, ready for anything that comes bursting out the gates. The heavy destroyers stayed still, whilst in this unit for the Scorpec destroyers rolled a 3 on the reanimation protocol, so that healed 1 and brought that dead one back with 1 wound taken off of it. The flayed ones, look, made a mistake. They can infiltrate. They should by rights be up here now, ready for potential charge, but no, I'll learn by mistakes. So the flayed ones are just there. And that's it for the movement phase. So again, not much shooting in this one, but we'll get on with it. So we're going to start with the Lockhurst heavy destroyers, and 2 can thread the needle through to the Exorcist. So 2 will go into that and one's going to go into the sisters over there. So let's see what happens. They stay still, so they'll be hitting on 2s, but because they're firing through no man's land, they're back to hitting on 3s. So the 2 going into the Exorcist, both hit. Strength 14 versus toughness 11, so 3s to wound. 1 wound goes through. It's -4 will become -3. So 6 up save. Does have a 6 up invulnerable save anyway, which it doesn't make. So it's D6 damage on. Oh, sorry, no, flat 6 damage. Flat 6 damage on the Exorcist. And the one going into the sister squad hits, wounds. She has an invulnerable save, which surprisingly she doesn't make, and that one sister gets absolutely, well, she gets goused pretty much. So all 6 Lockhurst destroyers are going to go into that penitent engine, really try and overkill. So again, hitting on 4s because they're going through no man's land. That isn't bad. They pick up a decent number of lethal hits, and then strength 5, toughness 6, so 5s to wound. Okay, so 7 wounds go through. So 7 wounds come through, so it's -2, but it becomes -1 because some of the cover, so that's 5s. Oh dear. So we have 10, 5 up, feel no pains. But at 5 wounds it is just enough. That's 2, 3, 4, 5. So does it blow up? No. Instead, that's also goused. So after what I'd say is a pretty successful shooting phase, we're going to attempt to charge. So a long one from the Scorpec destroyers into that squad of arco-flagellants just behind the barricade. It's an 11-inch charge. Here we go. No, I'm not going to re-roll it. So with that, that's the end of Necrons turn 1. So with that, we'll move on to Sisters turn 2 and see what they can do to slow down the Forsaken dynasty. We're at the end of the Sisters movement phase, and we've gone into the Path of the Penitent, adding 3 inches to the Penitent units, like the Penitent Engine, the Arco-Flagellants and the Repentia. The Penitent Engine can advance and charge, so that's what he's done, getting himself within about a 7 to 8 inch charge into the Lockhurst destroyers. The Repentia have come round, as have the Arco-Flagellants, for a beeline on the Necron Warrior squad. And the 2 squads of Flagellants have moved up, and then we'll make a decision as to whether they're going to charge, I think certainly 1 unit into the destroyers, maybe the 2nd unit into the destroyers, and ignore the flayed ones for now. We'll have a think. But first off, the Warriors were well placed in terms of Overwatch, and that is what they're going to fire into the Repentia squad. So they're rapid fire 1, so that's 20 shots coming in, hitting on 6s, but they'll also be lethal hits. And we get 3. So they get a 6 up invulnerable save, which they don't make, and it's damage 1, so they get a 5 up feel no pain, which they don't make, so that's 3 Repentia cut down, which could make a difference. And onto the shooting phase now, and there won't be too much because this squad here, the Retributors, are out of range. This squad of Battle Sisters advanced in an effort to get around to the comms tower. So the only thing shooting will be the Exorcist, and based on the damage caused, we're going to put everything into the heavy Lockhurst destroyers. So it'll be 3 heavy bolters hitting on 4s. that's sustained. Strength 5 versus toughness 6, so 5s to wound, and no wounds. Okay, so I'm going to need to spend a miracle dice, one of the 6s. We got a 6 when the penitent engine blew up. So it'll be 8 shots. So it'll be 8 shots going into the heavy destroyer. Okay. 3s to wound. Okay. So -3 becomes -2. Is there any cover? Yeah, a little bit. So -3 becomes -2. So 5s. And 1 is saved. So 4 wounds to get through. So I've already used a miracle dice on that unit. So I'm praying for some big damage. Nope. That kills 1. Okay. With the shooting phase over, I think it's time to declare charges. So we'll go from the penitent engine into the destroyers, the Repentia, and the Arco-Flagellants will go into the warriors. And then both squads of Arco-Flagellants on that end will go into the Scorpec destroyers. So we'll do some rolling and see you at the end of the charge phase. Okay, so after the charge phase, the penitent engine just made it in. Got exactly what it needed. Everyone else really overrolled, and we got 11s for most of the Arco-Flagellant squads, and then 7s and 8s, getting them all in across the board. So the Necrons do have 2 CP to interrupt. So picking the targets first, I think I'm going to start with the attacking the Scorpec Lords, and I'm going to trigger the extremist trigger word on one of the squads of Arco-Flagellants. So we'll get some dice together and attack the Scorpecs first. So you can invoke the extremist trigger word every time a unit is selected to fight. So we'll do it with the first one, but I'm also spending a CP on that first unit. That basically means it gets lethal hits on 5s, because they get sustained hits on with the flails. So this means it will go off on 5s, not on 6s. So here we go. So hitting on 4s, lethals, and the misses, it basically balances out, so everything hits. So not bad. Just before we roll the wound roll, just caught the fact that it's actually -1 to hit. It doesn't say just in range shooting on the mission. It just says -1 to hit if you're in no man's land, which we are. So I took the 4s out and we'll re-roll for the wound roll. Okay. So 5 at no AP, so 3 up saves. Oh, really? Okay, so that kills 1. Puts 1 down to 2 wounds. Okay. So Vincent, is it worth interrupting? I think I'll save the CP. I think that they can probably tank this. So going through the thing, that one killed the 1 on 2 wounds. We've got 1 wound left on another one. After doing all the hits and rolls for the second squad, we end up with just 3 wounds. And that kills the second Scorpec. Okay. Before we go on to the Repentia, we'll rinse and repeat with this last Arco-Flagellant squad into the warriors. So 18 attacks, hitting on 5s with sustained. Cool, I'm making a big difference, that -1 to hit. So we've got 3 6s for 3 sustained, but that was it. So strength 5, toughness 4, so 3s to wound. Okay, not bad. So 4 wounds come through, no AP, so 4 up saves. And they lose 2 warriors. Okay, so I'm hoping now the Repentia can do some damage. They get 2 attacks each, and they can re-roll the hit and the wound roll. so they get sustained hits as well. So although they're hitting on 5s, I'm going to re-roll. Here comes a re-roll. Okay. It's not bad after all that. 12 attacks coming in and we get 13. So not bad. So strength 6 versus toughness 4, so 3s to wound. And then reroll. So 11 wounds come through at -2, so 11 6-up saves. And that is the squad. There was 2 taken out. That's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They're looking 12 on their own. So if a penitent unit kills a unit in melee, you can add dice from your miracle pool and turn it into a 6. So the last fight to go on before we go on to the Necrons fighting back is the penitent engine going into the Lockhurst destroyers. So it gets 4 attacks. Would be hitting on 4s, but it's hitting on 5s because it's in no man land, but it is twin linked. Okay. So with that, we move on to the fight back. The Repentia did pile in. They had just enough movement, 3 inches to tag the unit, and then the Necrons have piled in. So we're going to split the attacks. The Lord can't fight because it's behind a couple of models, but we'll do these 2 Scorpex into this squad of Arco-Flagellants here, and then we'll do these 2 into the Repentia. So starting with the 2 into the Repentia, they've got the lethal hits ability now with the Scorpec Lord leading them. So strength 7, so 2s to wound basically. Okay. So 3 wounds come through, so 3 6-up invulnerable saves. Makes 1. Right, so the first, does that feel no pains? She's alive. Second one. She's dead. And then the other 2 into the Arco-Flagellants. To wound. Okay, so 3 devastating wounds because of the plasma sight. And then another wound. So we've got 5 wounds to get through. So there's 2 damage each, so there are 2 wounds each for the Flagellants. So first one is dead. It's alive. Now it's dead. Is alive. Now it's dead. Okay. So that's killed the unit just. In terms of miracle dice, a 2. Okay, we've got quite the pool growing at the minute, so let's see what the Lockhurst destroyers can do to take down the penitent engine. So there's 3 that can fight. So again, it's in no man's land, just so it's hitting on 4s. Wounding on 5s. No wounds. Okay. So the penitent engine's managed to hold up the Lockhurst destroyers, which is kind of doing its job. So they'll have to make a decision to either stay in combat or fall back. That's going to help as we go on to turn 3. At the end of the turn though, I've got a decision to make with these Ophidian destroyers. I can pick them up and put them into deep strike. And then we've got to make a decision with these Scorpex as well. But let's see what the Necrons do as we go on to Necrons, to the Necrons' turn. At the end of the movement phase for the Necrons. The Lockhurst destroyers fell back in an effort to try and start gaining movement up the board. The reanimation protocols brought back one of the Lockhurst destroyers, heavy destroyers, and brought back a Scorpec destroyer with 1 wound. The flagged ones moved up to start charging the arco-flagellants. The destroyers sort of stayed still. The big thing is there's a big gap where the Ophidian destroyers were at the end of their turn, and now they've appeared deep in the deployment zone for the sisters, and we've got a choice: the Retributor squad or the sisters squad. Therefore forcing a choice for the sisters to do the overwatch, and if they do, which direction, against the destroyers that are bearing down on their lines, or the Ophidian destroyers which are right in their lines. Yeah, it's got to be done. I think, yeah, these feel more of a threat than these, bizarrely. I mean, they're both a threat, but like, look at them. Look at the spikes. So we're going to overwatch these. So there's 4 multi-melters in there, so we'll start with those. Right, we'll drop 1 dice and we'll use a 6 from the miracle pool. So we've got 1, we should roll the others. Ooh. So interestingly, while the Palatines leading that unit, they have lethal hits. So those 4 just go straight through. There's no need to roll the wound roll. Excellent. So Ophidian destroyers have a 4-up save, even with cover. They're -4, so even with cover, they don't get a save. They do, however, have 3 wounds each. So we're not in melter range because they're outside of 9, because of deep strike. So got to roll for it. The first one is alive. Then whatever dice I roll would then be dead. On with 3. They're dead. On with 4. They're dead. So it's killed 3 so far. The Sister Superior has a combi melter, a combi gun, misses. The Imagifier gets 1 hit, doesn't wound, and then the plasma pistol from the Palatine hits, wounds. Minus, they get a save. I think just 6-up save, I think. No. Okay. And that puts 1 down to 2 wounds remaining. If the Ophidians do make a charge, I'm not sure it's made too much difference. I think there's still a high chance that squad's in trouble, but I think it's hopefully made some difference. So with that, we'll move on to the Necron shooting phase and see if we can pop that Exorcist with the heavy Lockhurst destroyers. Okay, here we go. 3 shots, hitting on 4s because we're going over no man's land. 1 hit. Is it worth a CP reroll for 1? Yes, that made a difference. That's also lethal, so it's gone straight through. So 3 to wound, and it wounds. Okay, so it's 2 6-up invulnerable saves for the Exorcist, or it's dead. And it's very dead. Does it blow up? No. So we get miracle dice for that unit of a 3. Okay, good shooting. With the shooting phase over, we can move on to charges, and there's going to be two. The flayed ones into that squad of arco-flagellants, and then the Ophidian destroyers. I think we're going to have to go round into the Retributor squad and try and take out the command structure at the same time. So, flayed ones, we'll just roll for distance. And they go 7, so we'll move those in. And then the big one for the Ophidian destroyers, they make it in. Excellent. Okay, so we'll start with the flayed ones. They get 4 attacks each and they're sustained. There's 10 of them. I'll roll it off camera. We'll come back. So when all the flailing spikes and limbs had come through the mist and the fog, that was 18 wounds that have been done. So that's 18 6-up invulnerable saves. Okay. It's a big ask, but some 5-up feel no pains. It's only 1 damage each on the flayed one, so we'll roll them all together and work it out. They're dead. So, miracle dice of a 2. Okay, so moving on to the Ophidian destroyers. We've burnt a plasma site for devastating wounds, and 5 attacks each. They are just inside, so just outside the deployment zone. Just. Strength 4, toughness 3, so 3's to wound with devastating wounds. Okay, so that's 1 devastating wound, just kills a sister outright. But at -2, bit of work to do. So 3 5-up saves for the sisters. So actually 3 4-up invulnerable save because of the imagifier. Okay, those Ophidian destroyers have just bounced. So before we do the fight back with the Retributor squad, we're going to start with the Repentia into the Scorpec destroyers, and we've spent a CP so they get critical hits on 5s. So they're still re-rolling all the hits and wounds. So let's go. So they're hitting on 5s though because of the mission rule. Really? So here's the re-roll. No. Strength 6, toughness 6, so 4s. And with the re-roll, okay, so 3 wounds come through. And make 1 and fail 2. So that kills. There was 1 on 2 wounds, 1 on 1 wound left. So that kills 1 and puts 1 down to 1 wound. So the Scorpec Lord enters into the fray and starts off with his claws, hitting on 3s because of the miasma. That isn't bad at all. So having with lethal hits as well, he gains that, I believe, because he's leaving the unit. 2's to wound. So that is 5 wounds come through on the invulnerable saves. Which one of them makes 1. So then it's 5-up feel no pains. Ooh, so he only kills 2 with his claws. Then his hyperphase harvester comes in and hits some wounds. 2's to wound. That's 3 more on the invulnerable save. And so 5-up feel no pain. So that is it's dead. It's dead. And dead. So that's 5. That's all the Repentia killed so far, just by the Scorpec Lord. And after all the attacks came in from the Scorpec destroyers, that the Repentia Superior didn't stand a chance. So what do we get from that squad being destroyed? We get another 2. Okay, so with that we'll go back to this Retributor squad with the Palatine, see what they can do to this Ophidian Destroyer squad. So the Palatine raises her blade and strikes at the Ophidian Destroyers. I'm hitting on 3s though because she's still outside the deployment zone. So strength 4, toughness 5, so 5's to wound. And 1 wound comes through -2. And they save it. Okay. The Sister Superior, she raises her mace and misses both times. So then the sisters themselves. Whew, 1 hit. And it doesn't wound. Okay, so that will be ongoing combat. We'll have to see how that plays out, because as we go into Sisters turn 3, the Sisters' right hand flank has all but collapsed. So how will the Sisters adapt to survive and hold up the Necrons' advance as we go into Sisters turn 3? So at the end of the Sisters movement phase, we fell back out of combat with these Sisters here, and we've moved this battle squad up. I think we're going to have to just relinquish control of the uplink tower and concentrate on the evacuation pad, the sky landing pad, and see if we can clear this and clear this and hunker down and see what the Scorpec Lord and his destroyers decide to do. So that's the plan. We'll go on to, it'll be a very, very quick shooting phase. We'll be shooting with this battle sister squad into this unit. There is a melter in that unit, and then mainly bolters, and then we'll also do some work with these. We've gone into the battle tactic that allows, I think it's +1 strength and +1 attack when you make a charge. So let's see how the sisters get on. So we'll start with the Penitent Flamers. There's 2 on each arm, so I'm reading it as 2d6 for each arm, but correct me if I'm wrong in any comments below. So that's 4d6 into the Lockhurst Destroyer squad. Okay, it'll be 5s to wound, but they are twin linked. So here's a reroll. A couple more. So 8 at no AP, 3 wounds to get through for each destroyer. And we kill 1. So firing all the bolts off camera, they bounced off the Ophidian destroyer, so now the melter goes in. Okay. So, hit on 4s. Misses. I'm going to spend a CP. Oh no. With that, we'll have to go on to the charge phase. So we're going to spend a miracle dice with this unit here. So each unit can spend 1 in its thing, from what I'm understanding. So that gets... we'll use a 5 for this squad and then roll. So that one's in, and I need to start spending them, so I'll use another miracle dice. I'll use one of the lower ones. I'll use a 3 and roll, and that unit's in, and then into the destroyers, and then I'll roll for him to get in, which is in. Okay, so with that we'll go on to the fight phase. So we're rolling off camera for the sisters over here in battle, but they've just managed to score 2 wounds. So it could take down that Ophidian destroyer. Maybe. It chips a wound off, but that's it. Okay, so with the extremist trigger word and the extra bits, each Arco-Flagellant now gets 7 attacks. I do apologise, I had missed the hazardous thing at the end. I will roll for these ones, I promise. So They're in no man's land, so I'm going to spend a CP to trigger critical hits on the last CP I've got, to trigger critical hits on 5s. Okay. This -1 really making a difference there, but managed to trigger 5. So strength 6 now, so toughness 6, so force to wound. 6 wounds come through, no AP. Still manages to kill one. Okay, so now the Penitent Engine, who gets 5 attacks now because of the extra attack, and it's hitting on 5 because it's still in no man's land, but there does have sustained. So what I'll do is I will use A5 and drop a dice and roll the others. Okay, so it gets 1 sustained, so 3 go through, so 3 hit, 3's to wound, so 3 wounds come through, -2. Okay, so all 3 go through. So do any of the flagellants kill themselves? No, they're fine. Okay, and with that, let's fight back with the Ophidian destroyers into the sisters. So we burnt the second plasma site to give devastating wounds. So now let's go and see what we can do with these destroyers. Strength 4, toughness 3, so 3's to wound, but devastating wounds. Ooh, okay, kills 3 of the sisters outright. Okay. So -2 damage, and kills 2 more. So 5 of the sisters die to the Ophidian destroyers. So the Lockhouse destroyers are going to put everything into the flagellants just to get rid of them if they can. So hit on 4s because of the miasma. Wounding on 3s. Okay, so 2 wounds come through. Oh, they're both save with the invulnerable save. Oof. So at the end of the sisters' turn 3, the Penitent Engines throwing themselves into the fray have held up those Lockhurst destroyers. They will have decisions to make, whether to fall back again and forsake another round of shooting. The sisters have also held up the Ophidian destroyers, but the destroyers are actually, almost move blocking this squad and this squad from holding this objective, from holding the landing pad. Over the far side, the flank has completely collapsed, so the Necrons here are free to move and start taking control of the command tower, the uplink tower. So let's see what the Necrons do as we go on to Necrons turn 3. We're back at the end of the command and movement phase for the Necrons in turn 3. The flayed ones have advanced and are heading towards the uplink tower. The Scorpec Lord got a good advance with his squad, and they're heading towards the other side of the compound. The Lockhurst heavy destroyers drop down to take a line of sight on the Penitent Engine, whilst the actual Lockhurst destroyers fell back out of combat. To which point I think we're going to overwatch with the Retribution squad. No, on second thoughts, we can't, because this squad fell back out of combat, so it has to be eligible as if it were eligible if it was your shooting phase, which they wouldn't be. So I'm reading that as you can't do Overwatch with a unit that fell back in the following player's turn. So very interesting. So with that we'll move on to the bit of shooting that we do have, which will be this heavy destroyer shooting at the Penitent Engine. So here we go. It hits. It definitely wounds. So we have in our pool a 6-up fill no pay, a 6-win vulnerable save. I will spend that 6 and keep him alive. And with that, that's the end of the shooting phase. So we go on to the charge phase and fight phase, of which the Ophidian destroyers are already in combat. So the sisters will get to fight first. So there's 4 sisters left. 3 hits. Okay. So now the Ophidian destroyers fight back. So 6 wounds came through in the end. So 6 5-up saves. See if we can clear that sister squad. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. That is the exact amount required, and that's that sister squad cleared. So we have miracle dice. We had 2. Little pool happening, although they're not that great. So at the end of Necrons turn 3, we've cleared another sisters squad down. The assets the sisters have is getting lower and lower. We're down to 1 retributor squad with the Palatine and the Imagifier. Sister Arabina is trying to stand firm in the face of the foe, whilst we have just 2 penitent squads left, 1 of Arco-Flagellants and 1 of the penitent engines. The rest of the battle grid has succumbed to the Great Awakening as the Necrons scour the planet. And so let's see what happens, how the sisters can try any kind of recourse as we go into battle round 4. So at the end of the sisters movement phase, we stay still with the Retribution squad, the Retributor squad, and then the engine and the Arco-Flagellants came up into the lines, chasing down that squad of Lockhurst destroyers. So we're going to go again for the flamers into the Lockhurst destroyers. Okay. So 5's to wound, but twin linked. So after the reroll, 10 wounds came through, so 10 3-up saves. Okay, that's not bad. It kills that one on 1 wound remaining and drops 1 down to 2 wounds. I don't think the Retributor squad has much choice but to try and literally just get rid of these Ophidian destroyers. So everything from this squad is going to go into those, and let's see if we can clear them. And we'll start with the multi-melters. So as they are inside the no man's land as such, because it's actually only a short 10-inch deployment down this edge, so they will be in no man's land. They would be hitting on 5s, but they did stay still, so they're back to hitting on 4s. So let's see what we can do. Not bad. So 4 hits come through. It's toughness 9 versus strength 9 versus toughness 5. Now they have a rule called Storm of Retribution, which means that if an enemy unit destroyed a friendly unit during the battle and you're targeting them, you can re-roll the wound roll. So 3's to wound, re-rolling. Good job. So all 4 come through with the re-rolls. At this range, it is Melter 2, -4. So in a true Storm of Retribution, they absolutely rinsed through that squad of Ophidian destroyers. And with that, we'll go on to the charge phase. There's only 2 charges to make, which is the Penitent Engine and the Arco-Flagellants. So the Penitent Engine gets an 8. The Arco-Flagellants get an 8 as well. So as the Penitent Engine goes in, it's screaming defiance for the Emperor's name and uses tank shock to try and whittle down the units, the Lockhurst destroyers in front of him. So you roll now equal to his toughness, and any 5 will do a mortal wound. 2 mortal wounds go through, and that does kill that one that's on 2 wounds remaining. So with that, we'll go on to the fight phase. So we'll start with the Archoflagellants, this time going into that destroyer. 7 came through after the sustained, and obviously with the -1 to hit because of no man's land. So now we're looking at 5s to wound. Just 2 wounds come through, and it makes 1 fails once it's got 2 wounds remaining. So we could spend 2 CP here to interrupt and try and do something to the Penitent engine, but there's not enough attacks coming in from that Lockhurst destroyer, so it's kind of 2 CP wasted for 2 turns that we've got left for the Necrons. So we'll go on to see what that Penitent engine can do. So 4 attacks, sustained 1. So it hits 3 of the times. Strength 10, toughness 6, so 3s to wound. Oh. I don't have any CP, so 1 save to make, which it fails. It is 2 damage, so that is where I'll spend a command point, getting myself down to 3 for the Necrons, and see if we can keep him alive. Which we do. That means we can start to reanimate and bring 1 back. Whilst I remember, we do the hazardous check for the Archoflagellants, and 1 kills himself, and then we'll fight back into that Archoflagellant squad actually with the Lockhurst destroyer. Hits twice. 3s to wound, and it only wounds once. So 6 of invulnerable save, which it fails, and a 5 up feel no pain, which it fails. So 1's down to 1 wound. We've lost 1 of the Archoflagellants. So that marks the end of turn 4 for the sisters. Successful in some respects by clearing the lines and clearing access back to this objective. Again, would have been good to clear those destroyers entirely, the Lockhurst destroyers, but let's see what the Necrons can do in their turn 4. At the end of the command and movement phase for the Necrons, another Scorpec destroyer was returned in this squad, and over here the flayed ones have advanced and have started to scramble all over the uplink tower, killing anything in their path, killing anything that's left inside the structure. Towards the rear, the heavy destroyers just move round to see if they can actually at some point get line of sight on anything that survives and starts to fall back towards the landing pad. So they're taking up like a long range firing position to try and take out anything that decides to try and get away. They want to annihilate everything that's in this battle grid. And with that, we'll go on to Necron's shooting phase, which there probably will not be much of one, and then on to the charge phase. So skipping straight ahead to the charge phase, there's only 1 charge to make, and that's going to be the Scorpec Lord and his destroyers into the remaining squad with the Palatine and Imagifier in it. It will be a 9-inch charge, so let's see what the Necrons can do. Come on. That isn't a 9. So, CP. Let's get in. That is a 9. And with that, move them in and let the fight phase commence. So, these four can fight at the front here, but the sisters are going to spend a CP taking them back down to nothing, on purity of suffering, which basically gives them a 4-up feel no pain. So they have a 4-up invuln and a 4-up feel no pain, just in an effort to try and hold on. So with that, we'll gather some dice and try and kill them. So again, we're inside no man's land, so we're -1 to hit. So hitting on 4s, but we have lethal hits because of the Scorpec Lord. And we've burnt the plasma site to get devastating wounds as well. Okay. 3s to wound. That's 1 devastating wound. And 2 4-up invulnerable saves, which they make. Okay. So, so 3 more for the lethals. Okay, so 2 go through with a devastating wound and that failed one. I'll get some dice and we'll do some feel no pains. So the first sister dies, second sister dies. So we'll start combat with the Penitent Engine. 4 attacks going into Lockhurst Destroyer. Okay, so 3 hit. So with the 2 6s being 2 sustains, that means we've got 5 hits after missing 1 as well. Crazy. So 3s to wound. That's kind of evened itself out a little bit. So 3 wounds go through. Let's see if we can save this Lockhurst Destroyer. No, we can't. No, we can't. The Palatine leads the fight back against the destroyers, strikes out with a Palatine blade, and hits twice. And doesn't wound. So, onto the sisters. So it's 3 attacks for the Image of Fire and 3 attacks from the sisters. Okay, 1 hit, no wounds. Okay. Well, that marks the end of the Necrons' turn, and they're right up in the lines now. Can the Scorpec Lord bring down this squad of sisters? Will with the Penitent Engines and the Archoflagellants be able to take any of the Scorpecs down as we go into sisters? Turn 5. So in the twilight hours of this battle, the Penitent Engine came round and the Archoflagellants just came forward, and there's nothing else to do but to charge. So the Penitent Engine gets in on the 6, and the Archoflagellants get in on the 9. So with that, we'll go on to the fight phase and see if those Penitent units can try and halt the advance of these Scorpec destroyers. So we'll start with the Archoflagellants, and they are going to strike out. Again, extremist trigger word used. Okay. So 5 to wound, but twin linked. Here's a reroll. That's not bad. So we've got 3, 6, 7 wounds, no AP. Okay. So we spend 2 CP counter strike, and we're going to interrupt and put everything into that Penitent Engine. Okay, so 3 lethal hits and then 4 normal hits. So strength 7, toughness 5, so 3s to wound. Not bad. So 6 wounds go through -2. So it's only 6 up save, 6 up invulnerable save. And it's made 2 of them. Dream is alive. It has 8 5 up feel no pains to make. And it does not make them. Oh dear. Does it go boom boom? No. Just rolling for the archoflagellants to see if they kill themselves. One does, yeah. So as we go on to Necrons turn 5, let's see if one of the Scorpion destroyers reanimates as we go into the command phase. It comes back with a wound. And with no real shooting to do, we'll go straight on to the fight phase and see if the sisters will survive the onslaught. So the Palatine raises her blade one last time and hits twice. I know she would hit 4 times, but not in amongst all that fog and mist. And doesn't wound. Okay. There's nothing further she can do apart from potentially try to survive the onslaught and try and get a message out. But let's see if the Necrons can tear down the unit. We will spend CP one more time for 4 feel no pain. Let's see what we can do. The Scorpet Lord raises his cleansing claw and strikes out towards the sisters. Okay. Wounding on 2s. At AP 1, it invokes their 4 up invulnerable save regardless. And 2 go through. And 2 4 up feel no pains. And they survive. So now, with his hyperphase harvester, strikes out once more. Hits all the times. Wounds all the times. And again, 4 up invulnerable off that imagifier. Okay, so 2 survive. These are 3 damage a time. First one is dead. The second one is dead, so that kills 2 more of the sister squad. As the Scorpion destroyers whirl up their blades and strike out. So they strike out, hitting on 4s, but with lethal hits. This unit can reroll hit rolls of 1, thankfully, and 2 more go through. So that's a wound. Okay, so 7 go through. So we'll start off on the sister. Let's use a miracle dice to pass one of them as a 4 up invulnerable. So that's 1. And the next one she passes. Next one she passes. The next one she fails. 4 up feel no pain. She fails, so she's dead. Okay. So we're going to the imagifier next. She has a 4 up feel no pain and 3 wounds. Okay. So she passed 1. She passed 2. Okay, she's failed that one. It's a 2 damage weapon. So she's taken 2 wounds. Okay. She fails that one. And she's dead. And with that, that leaves just the Palatine and 1 archoflagellant left from the whole of the battle sisters deployed to this sector to try and evacuate it. So at the end of the battle, the Scorpion Lord didn't manage to get onto the landing pad and secure it, but neither did the sisters. They're outside the range of it. That landing pad is contested, if you like. But over here, the flayed ones have ripped and torn flesh asunder as they got into the uplink tower, killed everything in sight. And so Sister Arabina frantically screams into the Vox, trying to warn people, trying to warn of what's coming, trying to let her other forces know what's happened in this battle grid. Little does she know, the tower is useless, and those screams and those commands and those instructions are all in vain. And that's how this story ends. The fate of Arabina, we'll have to see. Maybe she survives. Maybe she's taken as a trophy. Or maybe she's cut down and left as a reminder that vermin aren't welcome on these tomb worlds. That's how this story ends. That's mission 2 concluded for the Black Watch. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed running the Necrons. I think there's a couple of combinations there that are great for the sisters, and I think there's a couple of combinations that are great for the Necrons. Really enjoyed it. I hope you did too, and I'll see you on the next one.